All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is December 1st, 2025. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And, of course, it is another Monday. So that means only one thing, of course, another session with the great Mike King from realnewsandhistory.com. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great. Just waiting for the big snowstorm, as they say.
Yeah, I know. You just told me you guys are getting snow tomorrow. I hadn't even realized.
Well, we get it. You guys should get it worse. You're a little further up north, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, it is that time of year. It's hard to believe that it's December.
I always look forward to the first one, and then after that, it's the blues set in.
Yeah, it gets old pretty fast. But here we are, December 1st of 2025, and what a year it's been. Of course, we still have a whole month left in this year, so opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of what's going to play out. But Mike and I were just talking about that. It's been quite a ride since Trump's inauguration back in January, and here we are about to embark on the last month of this year. So we got a great show lined up for you guys tonight. As per usual, Mike's going to do a great presentation. He's got a couple of articles that we're going to go through. The first one is actually not an anti-New York Times or a Q York Times piece. It's actually from Mike's article section on his website, which we're going to revisit a little bit later in the show. But the piece is called "The Ed Snowden PSYOP Was an Anti-Q Operation." This is really important. So Mike is going to demonstrate in this article that the whole Snowden PSYOP, which actually began was back in 2013, if I remember correctly, which was long before the onset of the Trump era and certainly before Q showed up on the scene. And it was intended really as a preemptive CIA strike against what they feared would be the Great Awakening. And the objective, of course, was to establish CIA oversight over the NSA in an attempt to prevent the disclosure that the deep state feared was coming by way of the Q military operation, which of course didn't even exist at that point. But Mike's going to go into a lot of detail. He's going to discuss how the aim was essentially to demonize the NSA and their surveillance capabilities by prompting a national conversation about the collection of digital data and basically scaring people with all of these privacy concerns, when in reality, the cabal was behind this. They knew that the true aim of this whole Snowden story was to prevent the exposure of their secrets to the world. So that's going to be a great piece. And then the second one is a Q York Times article entitled "The Legend of Franco," with a Q, of course, is growing in Spain. And in this one, Mike's going to talk about how the White Hats are using reverse psychology, a concept that we discuss all the time on this show, to stem the growing resurgence of interest in Spain's historical populist leader, and how the leftist Spanish government is attempting to combat the rise of quote unquote right-wing ideology by promoting freedom as they define freedom as democracy, which we've come to recognize is basically just a code word for communism. So that should be a very interesting piece. And we're also going to discuss some recent events before we dive in. So before we get started, folks, I always forget to mention this in the beginning. Make sure you take a moment to hit that like button if you are watching on Rumble. And if you're watching on X, that's the heart button. It's the easiest way that you can support this show. And best of all, it is completely free. So please take a moment to do that. And as I indicated a moment ago, before we dive into Mike's presentation, I thought it would be a good idea to discuss the big story which broke since we last spoke, which was kind of a combination of the Seditious Six video, which was then followed up within a couple of days by the what I believe is the fake false flag shooting in DC on Wednesday of last week. Just when we thought it was going to get a little bit quiet over the holidays, just the opposite happened. So it's pretty obvious to me, Mike, that this video was clearly scripted to create the optics of attempting to divide the military, which actually ties in quite nicely with the Snowden article that we're going to get into. But you know, the White Hats, in my view, are essentially replaying what the deep state intended to do by putting the NSA in the spotlight back in 2013. So in response to that video, of course, Trump has been very vocal. He actually just posted on Truth Social. This is a direct quote. He posted this, I think it was earlier today. Read Title 18, Chapter 115, Section 2387, and then he follows it up with a quote. Whoever with the intent to interfere, impair, influence the loyalty, moral discipline of the military and naval forces should be fined or imprisoned up to 10 years. So this event has sparked a national conversation. Of course, Anons identified the comms right away. The shooting took place outside of the CQ building on the corner of 17th Street. We also came to find out that the shooter had connections to the CIA, that the supposed victim's name was Googled in Israel days before the event. And then, of course, we had Mark Kelly, even after being threatened with court-martial, continuing to double down, urging troops to defy what he characterized as unlawful orders. Clearly, I don't think he's that stupid. I think he's playing a role in this movie. I'm curious to get your take on this. But my overall viewpoint on it, before I turn it over to you, is that I think this is being done to further introduce the concepts of sedition and treason and really expand the narrative for military intervention that Trump is seeding it. He's been continually talking about tribunals and posting memes along those lines. He's also seized the opportunity that the optics have presented to aggressively expand deportations, to halt all immigration from third world countries. And not only that, he tied it back to fake Biden, letting in all these people back in 2021. And he's used this event to focus the attention of the nation on the auto pen. And so shortly thereafter, the rationale presented itself for him to revoke all of Biden's pardons, his executive orders. So that, of course, opens up the door to the J6 conversation. Once again, it puts the spotlight on individuals that he pardoned, like Fauci, Liz Cheney, his son Hunter, and many others. So now they're exposed to prosecution. So this was quite a series of events that occurred over the Thanksgiving holiday. I just wanted to give you an opportunity on behalf of the audience to share your take.
Yeah. Well, I was certain right from the very beginning that was a false flag, a crisis actor fake false flag in D.C. I mean, we're watching a movie. And I mean, ultimately, you want to look at every event in depth and not make a rash decision.
Right.
But we're in an environment where it's movie until proven otherwise.
Yep.
And I couldn't prove it otherwise. To the contrary, the closer you look at it, you see how fake it was. They took the guy's clothes off in the street, winter in D.C., and there's no blood wounds on it. I mean, shouldn't you do that in the ambulance? I don't know. And the whole thing with the Allahu Akbar, I mean, clearly scripted, and it's moving the ball again, preparing people for something like the overt declaration of an insurrection act down the road.
Yep.
So this was only going to lead to like further deployment and more support for it.
Right.
And it does tie in, and it's not by accident that it's timed perfectly with what these senators are doing and saying. And Mark Kelly's wearing a mask, by the way. That he's long gone. Him and his wife. You know who his wife is? Mm-hmm. Congresswoman Gabby Giffords.
Yep. I heard you actually talk about that with Dave.
The fake shooting, and then she used to talk with slurred speech. It was all make-believe. Yep. But that was fake. She's the one who coined the phrase, fight, fight, fight. That Q copied, and then Trump said after he was fake shot. So
we do a little bit of trolling, right?
Definitely trolling, yeah.
Yep.
And there's also an element of replaying, this is a common theme, the things that the deep state has done or would have done.
Yep.
Because if you go back, early on in Trump's first term, maybe 17 or 18, I'll have to dig this up. I think I did an article on it once. There was an admiral, who was a total deep stater. Was it Raven or Mick Raven, or it might have been someone else?
McRaven.
Let me research it. But he wrote an editorial in the New York Times saying that essentially this, that military personnel are not bound to obey unlawful orders. And he's really, if you read between the lines, he's suggesting that the military could ultimately overthrow Trump. So the military has been fractured. So it's not as easy as the military just taking over this country if there was a coup. Because if you look at these things historically, whether it's the Russian Civil War, the Spanish Civil War, the military splits as well. don't think for a minute that the military is, monolithic, Republican, conservative, pro-Trump. I mean, maybe in the special forces and things like that, it'll be overwhelming, but certainly the rank and file and a lot of these political generals. So this was a very delicate process on so many levels for the Cuba operation to move forward. You not only have to purge the Democrat Party, Republican Party, Hollywood, media, academia, etc., but the military was a big problem. Many, many rats in there.
Yep.
And I think Derek Johnson's done a good job tracking all the military people who've been fired or resigned, right? Mm-hmm. So this is kind of a replay of that, because this is exactly what they would have been doing.
Yep.
Inciting the military, and they would have had muscle and assets in the military to do just this.
Exactly.
So thank God we have a special operations psychological warfare civil war that took place. Because if it went the other way, it would have been military on military. We're going to talk about that tonight. That's what happened in Spain. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons I chose that piece. It's so relevant as a lesson. That's what we did not want, is a civil war. So yeah, we are seeing what we would have had to endure, and be thankful that we didn't. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely is what they would have done. They would have incited sedition, but done it in such a way to make it look like Trump and those supporting him are the traitors.
Yep, exactly.
But this is all controlled. The senators, that's all staged. The fake shooting, that's all staged. It's just they're just play acting everything. I got to dig up some pictures of Kelly. It's pretty clear to me he's wearing a mask. It's not him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and this really kind of goes back to that, the same theme we've been discussing over and over. If we had gotten what we wanted when we wanted it, we would have been facing a much, much more difficult struggle, and it would have been violent. It would have been bloody. I go back to January 6th, and shortly thereafter, the inauguration of fake Biden.
Yeah.
So many people. I don't know if you expected at the time, but I certainly expected that the military was going to storm in. They were never going to allow it.
Yeah.
But at that point in time, as we all know, I think that was the moment when Trump invoked the Insurrection Act and ultimately had to remove all these people covertly. But had they kicked the front door in, this is the type of scenario that we would have been facing. And that's really my take on it as well, that we're watching a replay of events that the deep state had planned and certainly would have engaged in if the Q operation had proceeded in the way that so many of us had anticipated and really wanted to see happen at that point in time.
Yeah.
So, very, very important to point that out. And I would also add to that, of course, this is Alyssa Slotkin. She was one of the seditious six. And MJ Truth put this post out a little bit earlier today. Seditious sixer Alyssa Slotkin predicts President Trump's next moves. How's this for narrative seeding, Mike? Number one, he will invoke the Insurrection Act.
Oh, nice.
And impose martial law. And then it goes on. Elections could be canceled. Election polling places would be surrounded with military and federal law enforcement to, quote, intimidate voters. That's, that's always their argument. And number two, label politicians domestic terrorists or criminals and or going after the infrastructure of elections, voting machines, voter ID, mail-in ballots. So she's just like Kelly, she's doubling down on this narrative. And you have to ask yourself, in the real world, knowing full well that they are coming out with this proclamation, basically as elected officials advising the military to disobey what they know are lawful orders of the president, this clear-cut case of sedition. They've been called out on it, and both Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin, and the rest of them are just simply doubling down on this. So in the process, we're not only getting the replay, but they're also throwing in the narrative seating there of where this is very likely to go over the next several months, especially next year as we get into the optics of building up to the midterms and everything else. Even though we know that elections at this point no longer matter, it's all part of the show. Nevertheless, this is all being done for the normie. So when she's out there talking about the Insurrection Act, she's out there talking about designating all of these politicians as domestic terrorists, which indeed they were. That's exactly, I think, what the White Hats are up to. They're putting that idea out there, letting it marinate, like we talk about pretty much every week in the minds of the normies, so that when the inevitable hammer drops,
Yeah.
people will have been, to use your term, inoculated against this idea. And of course, Trump has also come out and announced that through Pam Bondi that they're going to be sending the National Guard into basically every state on the heels of this false flag in D.C. So pretty exciting.
It's a nice progression from, I think it was June when you had the first deployment, make-believe deployment, whatever, in Los Angeles.
Yep.
So here we are 5-6 months later, and now it's rolling out to the whole country, and nobody's protesting.
That's right.
So it's that gradual. You could have done this 6 months ago.
Yep.
So these things take time.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully not too much longer, but you see how they're doing it. They're just letting it ripen.
That's right.
Like a fruit. It's a long process, but like you always say, the trajectory is just unmistakable.
Yep. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
These people are all fake. Again, I want to reiterate, Slotkin. Whether some of them are real and under submission, like the Q post said, all we'll do as told. Yep. I'm sure there's some of that. And then others are wearing masks. There is no Democrat Party opposition. Whatever you hear from a Democrat, it's either a white hat or a Democrat under submission.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. They are replaying what the deep state would have done.
Yeah.
And that's really the key part. That I think everybody in the audience here understands that we are watching a scripted movie. I don't see a lot of objection to that narrative that we continue to put out to people, because we believe it's the truth, and certainly it's evidence backed. But no doubt about the fact that the deep state is under control, and what we're watching now is a replay for the normies of how they would have responded to the military deployment, to the mass deportations, and of course, the ever accelerating exposure operation of all the deep state players.
Yeah.
Of course, we also have about, I think it's like 17 days or 18 days left until the deadline on the Epstein file. So that, the timing on this is just absolutely
that's going to be nice.
Yeah. We're going to have to see what happens with that.
One more other observation is, there's no such thing as Islamic terrorism. I stand by that. You may have cases of CIA, Mossad recruiting some fanatical Muslim patsy to do a dirty deed. Okay, but whether you're talking about Al Qaeda or ISIS or 9/11 or Levant affair, it's always the usual suspects.
Muslim Brotherhood, which they just
Muslim Brotherhood. Yeah, I mean, it's such a predictable script.
Yep.
And I don't like to see that, because I don't like innocent parties being blamed for anything. However, I think the White Hats know that, we're communicating with normiedom. So they scripted this character to say, Allahu Akbar, Islamic terror. It works because that's what people are conditioned to.
Yep.
If you just had him like as a ordinary run-of-the-mill lone terrorist type guy, not as scary. You bring in the Muslim boogeyman. That works. Yep. It works across all political divides, because we're because of 9/11.
Exactly.
So you might as well roll with it. Sometimes, a particular narrative is so strong, rather than challenge it and overturn it, just go with it.
Yep.
It's like when Putin calls his adversaries Nazis. He knows the true story of World War II, but there's nothing worse than you could call somebody but a Nazi. So just roll with it. So that's what they're doing here. That's why they scripted this guy to say Allahu Akbar.
That's like the Mossad calling card when they come out.
Yeah. But that really strikes fear in the heart of a normie.
No, you're right.
So in this way, they're really going to enhance the support that they get for continuing this rollout of the National Guard as we move towards the Insurrection Act.
Mm-hmm. So, and eventually the truth down the road will come out about all this stuff. But I've said right from the beginning that the White Hats brilliantly decided that instead of just flipping over the chessboard and confusing the crap out of everybody, they're writing the script in accordance with the way that people have been conditioned going back.
Precisely. Yeah.
The war on terror and 9/11. I mean, that's been so deeply ingrained in the psyche of the population that they're using it to their advantage. Not unlike what you describe in terms of taking a piece off the chessboard and painting it white and putting it back.
Precisely. Yeah. It's a variation of that. That's right. Instead of using a personality, in this case, you're using a theme.
Exactly.
Yep. Why challenge it? What are you going to sit there and try to re-educate the public that there is no Islamic terrorism, and good luck with that. Just roll with it.
Right. Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's hard enough to get through to the normies just using using the way that they've already been conditioned. But if you try to front end all of this, all of these explanations about the way the world really works and who's really responsible and all that stuff, it would be totally counterproductive. So they have to go through the the machinations of the plan and the script, and then on the other side of it, of course, that's when we'll begin to see, hopefully, the real truth come out about Israel and Mossad basically creating Islamic terror as the boogeyman to justify getting the U.S. involved in these endless wars so that they could pursue their agenda of the Greater Israel Project. I mean, it's quite simple. So, okay, excellent. Well, I just wanted to touch upon that really quickly, mostly on behalf of the audience, like I said, because everybody wants to know Mike's take for good reason. But with that, folks, let's go ahead and pull up our slides here. I'm going to dig into the first article. The Ed Snowden PSYOP was an anti-Q operation. So take it away, Mike.
Yeah, I described this as a Q proof, which actually occurred before there was such a thing as Q. And when you look back at it, it's very powerful because of that fact. Because, people who are on the fence about Q, like MAGA people, are just dipping their toes in the Q land. If you show them a series of posts that later on came to fruition, they can always dismiss that as well. Laws of probability. You got lucky. It's like Nostradamus, or picking a horse race. But not this, because this story clearly proves that there was a war going on between black hats and white hats that was just about to really heat up in 2013. And I actually did I did a couple articles. I used to have the old website, tomatobubble.com, and I was able to find them through the archives. One was called the Snowden Snow Job. The other one was Fake and Faker in 2013. Day one, I called this as total bullshit. Okay. And this is one of the excerpts from one of the articles that I wrote. Can you smell the Hollywood bullshit? All caps are mine. What is the game this time? Is the goal to create civilian oversight, i.e. direct CIA control over the military-run NSA? It is too early in the game to know for sure what the Snowden trick is all about, but understand this, it is a dirty trick of some sort. And, a lot of people were confused by this, even on our side. Conservatives and libertarians lined up behind this guy because he was presented as a whistleblower who was exposing government surveillance of us, and they got all our text messages and emails and iPhone, et cetera, et cetera. But I knew from day one that he was no hero, that he was a rat. Now, how did I know that? Am I prophetic? No, because I understand precedent. So this whole process for me of studying, researching, and writing about history, real history, all of these years, it was almost providential how it prepared me for when Q started posting that very early on. I'm like, this is real. Okay.
Well, this is one of the things that I love about you, Mike, is that you go back to. I mean, this is 4 years before Q showed up. This is 2 years before the famous escalator ride when Trump came onto the scene. Yes, he was starting, and I know you're going to get into this, but he was starting to put some political tweets out there and so forth. But nobody really had this on their radar, and you predicted this whole thing because you understood the history, this long-standing rivalry between the NSA and the CIA, and certainly the fact that mainstream media ran with this and propped this guy up as a hero. Probably that's like the number one tell right there that something's going on, something's fishy.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's go ahead and dig into this piece here. This is fascinating.
All right. So, and again, this is an excerpt directly from one of my articles, 2013, and I presented the 6 points, or tells, as they say in poker parlance, that should clearly indicate that this was a fake, a fraud, a psyop. Okay. Yep. First and foremost, the intense media hype is a sure sign of a deep state sales job. Mm-hmm. We all remember how big that was. It just came out of nowhere one day. Boom. It was almost like COVID mania or Obama mania. One of those things. They call it, what did that April Levine call it at the event 21? We got to flood the zone.
Flood the zone, yeah.
Right before they had that big meeting before they rolled out the COVID-19 hoax. Mm-hmm. This was a total flood the zone operation. Every network, every newspaper, and the whole country was behind this guy. Oh, what a brave young man. Found all this information. It was really intense, the media coverage. I don't have to tell you that. Everybody remembers that.
Oh, sure.
That alone tells you it's a fraud. Yep. That alone. Mm-hmm. And it was positive media coverage. They were fawning all over him. The right. Whistleblower, which is that term whistleblower is a sainted terminology, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you get a true whistleblower, that's someone to admire, but they gave him the sainted title. And it's interesting, if the media loves whistleblowers so much, you know how many whistleblowers there were on the record as knowing one element of 9/11 or another, and they're just ignored? Mm-hmm. They don't talk to those whistleblowers.
Of course not. No. Right. If Snowden was the real deal, they either would have ignored him, or they would have, if they had to, they would have just done they would have fled the zone with demonizing the man instead of calling him a hero. So you
wouldn't even have to do that. They could have just killed this thing by silence.
Yeah.
But the fact that they hyped him up is absolute 100% indisputable evidence, as good as receipts, that this was a deep state operation.
No doubt.
Secondly, but there's more. The utter implausibility of a young man throwing his life and his girlfriend away just to let some obscure journalists know about NSA's capabilities. By the way, NSA's capabilities were already known. Not perhaps to the mass public, but it's not as if this guy went into the NSA and discovered something horrifying. It's old news. And we're to believe that he made himself a wanted man, a fugitive, voluntarily, had to leave the country. He's got a girlfriend. He's got a father. We never heard about his mother. That's just not practical. That's just impossible. Who's going to flush their life down the toilet for this adventure? And he's not even telling us anything really. Mm-hmm. Didn't make sense. No. Third, this is a big one. This is almost as compelling as number one, the media hype. The quote-unquote spontaneous pro-Snowden demonstrations, replete with professionally made English language signs, which popped up in CIA-infested Hong Kong. So the story is, he's got this information, he gives it to journalists at the Guardian in London, flees the country, arrives in Hong Kong, and there's a flash mob there. They're holding up signs, protect Snowden, down with the NSA, professional signs in English language. I mean, they do speak English in Hong Kong too, but it was just weird. Mm-hmm. Big demonstration, and this got tons of hype too, and everybody saw. What do these people in Hong Kong care about this hacker from the NSA just landed in Hong Kong? But it was pretty intense. Yeah. And again, from my study in history, going back to the French Revolution, whenever you see this stuff, boom, that's an indicator of an op. There are no spontaneous mobs that just pop up like that. Mm-hmm. Number 4, the revelation that Snowden was an ex-CIA, which is kind of like being an ex-mafia. You know, I mean, how do you an ex-CIA? Yeah. And this is the official line. I'm not accusing him of being CIA. This is what is reported. This is what is known, is that he was in the CIA and then he went to work for the NSA. He's ex-CIA. And although the lines are not perfectly delineated and clean, generally speaking, CIA bad, NSA good. Yep. Okay, with elements of both in each. There's white hats in the CIA. Okay, and there are probably some NSA guys who are working for the CIA, but generally speaking, so he's ex-CIA. Mm-hmm. There's another red flag. Number 5, the sudden collaboration between Snowden's quote unquote father and a Jewish neocon insider named Bruce Fine. So Snowden's dad and Bruce Fine, they're doing press conferences and they're doing these publicity stunts, writing open letters to their son, who's now a fugitive, and what a hero he is, blah, 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 blah. Well, you look into Bruce Fine. I mean, his pedigree is 100% Israel first, neocon, American enterprise. He's one of those. So what's he doing here in the mix? Huge red flag. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, number 6, the known rivalry between CIA and NSA. Not widely known, but nonetheless known. I knew about it. And you've heard me talk often about the Venona intercepts.
Oh, yeah.
The Army, the U.S. Army Signal Corps was monitoring Soviet communications, and they caught up all of these communist traitors in the American government, and they were watching them for like 40 years. This wasn't declassified until 1990s. And Army Signal Corps later became NSA. So there's a whole story. I mean, this is the essence of black hats, white hats.
Yep. And
I knew this was going on before Q even posted.
Yeah, and if I recall that Q did make some references to the Signal Corps in the drops. I don't think the Venona intercepts were made directly, but I certainly remember.
No, but there is a reference to the Signal Corps.
Yeah. Yep.
And so this goes back a long time. You know, Venona takes us back to World War II. And if you want to look at things like General Douglas MacArthur's harsh actions against the Communist Bonus Army in 1932, you could look at that as another precedent for patriotic elements within the U.S. military who are always keeping an eye on these types of elements and doing what they could within their own limited way, given their limited power, to resist them and push back against them.
Right. And we've talked about the Venona intercepts and the Army Signal Corps, on previous shows. And the main takeaway is that they gathered all of this intelligence. They kept it secret because they couldn't trust anybody, and not even the presidents knew about it, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes. The problem is they gathered all of this intelligence, all of this evidence even, but it was warrantless, so they couldn't actually use it. They couldn't do anything with it. That was the essence.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And that's one of the main pillars of the Q operation, is to quote Q, he's used this term several times, how do you inject evidence legally? And that's what all of these raids and all these investigations were all about.
Yep.
So this is very important precedent to understand. And once you have a solid foundation of this, then the idea of a Q operation doesn't become so preposterous at all. Yep. And for me, I was expecting it. I wasn't expecting it in this form, but I always thought at some point at the 11th hour, they've got to rise up like Franco in Spain.
Yeah.
Because what's the point of doing all this? What is the point of monitoring these people? Because what they're doing, they got lists. The military's always had lists of every communist, subversive, Satanist scum in this country. So if it ever came down to having to save the country at the 11th hour, they know where to find these people. Yep. So what would be the point in having this degree of surveillance if you're not intending to, at some point, if necessary, intervene militarily and save the country?
Yep. Well, it's reminiscent of the Q post that where we were told that had Trump not won, they were prepared to do the unthinkable. And so it's pretty obvious sign. So this was back in 2013. And then you fast forward to the election of 2016. I was like that critical moment where the military decided it's now or never. Either we get our guy in there and we run this as a covert operation and a series of psyops. We take out the bad guys behind the scenes, and we present the public with the optics of basically what we described earlier, what the deep state would have done and how they operated, and expose everything through this scripted movie, or it was going to be a hot coup.
Right.
And what's interesting, one of the questions I have for you, and I'm not sure if you're going to get to it, so if I'm jumping the gun, let me know. But Snowden was 2013, right?
Right.
So why 2013? I guess is sort of my question, right? Because you were anticipating, and I was actually at that point in time I was pretty recently awakened, but I assumed that eventually we were going to go down the road of some sort of a civil war, that there was going to be eventually there was going to be a violent insurrection against the government. But why 2013? Why do you think that they chose that time period to launch this psyop?
Well, thanks for that softball.
I knew it'd be
2013 is, it's all in my book, The Secret Plan to Save Humanity. I've got a section titled The 60,000 Man Secret Army, which was based on that comprehensive, extensive Newsweek investigation. Newsweek with a Q, by the way. Based on Freedom of Information Act documents that I just stumbled across quite by accident. But according to Newsweek, the 60,000 man secret army with fake identities, masks, and all that began to take shape during this period. Because it said about a decade ago, and that article is like 2022. So the 60,000 man secret army was being assembled at this period. And this is also the moment in time when a certain Manhattan real estate developer turned reality TV star became overtly political. Now, he did run for president back in 2000, and nobody really knew exactly what he stood for. But at this time, his tweets take a sharp turn to the right. The Obama birth certificate, global warming is a hoax. These pedos, we got to execute them within a week, etc. Really wild stuff, which, again, I didn't make anything of it at the time. I mean, I was aware of his birth certificate crusade. That was great. So it's clear to us in hindsight, and with the benefit of this Newsweek investigation, that this is the moment in time when the deep state was really beginning to put the pieces together. And this is observable. And believe me, the deep state knew it as well. I don't think they understood the manner in which it would unfold, how they were going to do it. But nonetheless, they knew that.
They knew about the secret army.
They knew about, they had to have known about the secret army, but they certainly knew that the NSA had it all. As Q likes to say, we have it all. That's not even, that wasn't even a secret, really. I mean, it's been known for some time. And some of this stuff came out in the wake of the 9/11 false flag. People who in the know were asking, wait a minute, we have capabilities to monitor everything. How did this happen? So now let's put yourself in the position of the deep state on the opposite side of the chessboard. You know something is up with Trump. You know something is up with the 60,000 man secret army. You know the NSA has it all. You may not know the nature of what's being planned, what's about to be unleashed, but it's very unsettling. Therefore, Snowden mania was the deep state's preemptive strike against the Q operation, the foundation of which was no such agency, NSA. This is how Q never says NSA. Q just says no such agency, NSA.
Yep.
So it's quite obvious that's what it was.
Okay, so they were starting to get spooked around this time. They knew they knew that the NSA had everything. They also knew that the NSA was run by military patriots.
Right.
They also knew that there was some sort of a covert clandestine army that was being constructed in the background. Yeah. And you had Trump emerging as a political force. So you kind of put the pieces together back then.
Yeah.
They sensed that something was happening. But the ace card that they held at that time, at least so they thought, was that, again, like we talked about just a moment ago, they may have all of this evidence. They may have every picture, every video, every email, but they can't do anything with it under the construct of the civilian system, right? So they believe that as long as they were able to maintain power at the highest levels, they never thought she would lose. That they would be basically in the clear, and they could, they could brush it off and say, sure, they got everything, but it's never going to see the light of day, and certainly they can't prosecute us with it. But they were scared because they sensed that some sort of a plan was beginning to take shape around
Yeah,
this.
right. That's right. And I would also mention by this time there were also other indicators that the NSA had ways of injecting stuff. Call your attention to ClimateGate. Remember that scam?
Mm-hmm.
Ever hear ClimateGate? Where it was discovered that these top level global warming so-called scientists affiliated with the UN panel on climate change, in their internal communications are plotting and scheming how to manipulate the math to get them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these emails were hacked and leaked. And it was very embarrassing to the climate change hoaxsters.
Yep.
And I remember Nancy Pelosi was on a warpath about this. Who did this? These are traitors, this and that. Mm-hmm. I had no idea at the time this was NSA, but when you look back, it makes perfect sense. So again, like I said, yes, they knew that the data was not actionable. Nonetheless, how could they be comfortable knowing that they're seeing everything we do in real time?
Mm-hmm.
They may not do nothing now. They might do something in the future. We don't know what. We don't know how. We don't like them having that info. Period.
Right. Exactly. Because the military patriots, I mean, if you're the deep state, if you're the cabal, they're the enemy. So it's like basically the enemy having possession of all your dirty laundry and sitting back and waiting for some sort of a leak. I mean, WikiLeaks hadn't even come along by this point, but I think that they were anticipating that sooner or later, knowing full well that the people in control of this information were their enemy, that they were going to find a way to make this information available to the public. So they had to make a preemptive strike against these.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about it. They're not stupid. The deep state's thinking to themselves, okay, they got this dirt. They can't use it lawfully, but they still got it. They're going to figure out a way to use it on us.
Yep.
And later on in the story, I'm going to show you an example how I believe one way that was done. But they could always leak stuff. So I mean, they had to have been terrorized by the knowledge that they had all of this info. Okay, and then you have these other things starting to formulate and coalesce. So they had to take out the NSA.
Yep, they had to basically throw a bunch of shade on the institution itself and make the NSA appear to be the enemy of the people, when in reality, it was the CIA who was running this operation at the behest of Mossad.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So let's keep going here.
Here's a big headline from the day from The Guardian. The Guardian played a key role in this. This would be British deep state. You know, they're all in cahoots, Mossad, CIA, MI6. But this was a newspaper to which a lot of this stuff was leaked to. The Snowden, this is where he gave the data. Headline, Edward Snowden, the whistleblower behind the NSA surveillance revelations, 29-year-old source behind the biggest intelligence leak in the NSA's history, explains his motives, his uncertain future, and why he never intended on hiding in the shadow. Washington Post, the man who leaked NSA secrets, steps forward. Now, at this time, the NSA really is no such agency. It's a very low profile. If you were to poll 100 Americans, ask them what's the NSA, you might get one or two who knew what it was. Okay. Right. After this was done, certainly a majority, more. A lot of people, well, what is this NSA? I never even knew this existed. So you can imagine how pissed off they were at the NSA, because they really don't want their existence known for obvious reasons. I mean, it's what you almost call like an open conspiracy. I mean, yeah, we know they exist. They got this huge building, but it's just not something generally talked about or widely known like the CIA is. And that's the way they wanted it.
Yep. And back in 2013, I would also make the argument that the general public was still kind of adjusting to the new way of life of smartphones and basically everything being online, everything being digital. I mean, it's not as if they hadn't existed. I think I got my first smartphone back in like 2009 or something like that. But they really hadn't been that full transition into like completely digital life. And so it would also make sense that they would want to act at this point to to kind of play upon the public spheres as well, for
Yeah.
put that out there. Oh, the government's watching you. They keep tabs on everything that you say
Yeah.
and everything that you do. And on and on and on to galvanize the public and to create this negative impression of the NSA, when in reality, they weren't, they may have been collecting data, but they're certainly not concerned with, my text messages or, or,
Yeah.
phone or anything like that. But they were trying to characterize it that way, as if the NSA was actually Big Brother. In reality, it was really the other way
Now,
around.
it's just Venona intercepts writ large on steroids. That's all it was.
Mhm.
You're looking at the bad guys,
Exactly.
not us. Yeah.
Yep. But they characterized it very differently, of course.
All right. And in so doing, they sucked in a lot of conservatives and libertarians.
Yes.
To line up behind this clown.
Yep. Absolutely.
Boy, was it intense. And Europe, worldwide too, because, this is a worldwide war. Time Magazine, The Informers, is the heroic Ed Snowden. And my rule about Time Magazine.
I was about to say it. No, you said it first.
if you haven't got the time or the inclination to think or research, you want to take the lazy man's way out. If they're puffed up on the cover of Time Magazine, it's a black hat. If they're vilified, just reverse the situation. Mm-hmm. And you can say that for Der Spiegel of Germany, too. Mm-hmm. Asylum for Snowden. I assume that means asylum for Snowden.
Yep.
But all throughout Europe and Canada and the whole Western world, they really lionized this character. Mm-hmm. This is all deep state press at the time.
Yep. And there it is, right on the cover of Der Spiegel. Big Brother is watching you. Yeah. That's kind of what I was just talking about before.
Yeah.
Trying to scare the public, really.
Yeah.
It's always the same playbook, different variations, but it's always fear-based propaganda, inversion of reality. And there it is, Time Magazine yet again.
Yeah. And here's the hero's welcome that our whistleblower received upon arriving in Hong Kong. Now, thanks to the great Xi Jinping, Hong Kong is now free of deep state influence. They clean that rat's nest out totally. When you would hear in the fake news about crackdown on civil rights and human rights in Hong Kong, what they mean is that the deep state presence was uprooted.
Yeah, I remember that when they were all standing there with their bow and arrows, and there was this big kind of like so-called insurrection inside of Hong Kong. Yeah. What year was that?
Even though Hong Kong was ceded back to China in 1999 by the British, the Western presence never left. They were deeply embedded there. And you can see, look at this. He goes to Hong Kong. CIA infested Hong Kong at the time. And look at these are all professional signs, the English language, protect privacy, protect Snowden. This is a phony, total phony.
Yep.
This is a rent a mob.
Yep. All right. Sorry, I was just looking up something there.
Yeah.
That uprising in Hong Kong, that was like
the umbrella revolution. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like
all fake. Yeah.
2019, 2020. Yeah. So this is a little bit further down the road, but she cleaned that up. And indeed, there were a lot of deep state cabal elements in China as well that had to be dealt with.
Yeah. Yeah. Places like Shanghai. So, like you said, Xi, Putin, and Trump worked together.
Yep.
And I wrote about that 8 months before the first Q post as well. Mm-hmm. But Hong Kong was long. And the reason why Hong Kong was so vulnerable, because it was under British control until 1999. How did Britain come to govern Hong Kong? Well, that was the result of a treaty which followed the Second Opium War. They literally fought 2 wars in order to impose opium on the Chinese people. The Chinese government tried to stop it. The people are being doped up. This stuff was strong, pure opium. There are Chinese people just hanging out in the opium dens all day, just getting stoned off their ass. And they tried to stop it. The British said no. They actually fought wars. They're called the Opium Wars. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
As a result of which they they took control of Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So even when they left, they never really left.
Kind of makes you think about the fentanyl production in China. Them shipping all that stuff into the U.S. I wonder if there was a kind of an element of payback to that.
Who knows?
The opium wars, I don't know,
Yeah.
but all right.
There you go. Hong Kong is a substantial size crowds. I mean, you don't put something together. It's just inconceivable to me that people in Hong Kong would be so passionate about this clown. And they whipped up these signs in his demos like overnight.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So there, yeah.
So he spent some time in Hong Kong, and then he went to Russia. Because again, there's deep state elements in Russia, so he must have somehow finagled asylum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting the way they scripted it. Snowden, Edward Snowden.
Snowed in.
Snow in Moscow. He was snowed in.
I like that. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah. I doubt that's his real name. I think he's an invented character.
Oh yeah. 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 This 29-year-old martyr just, comes out of nowhere and throws his whole life away just so he can go into hiding and all this. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Total ridiculous. But you can see it. It's another one of those spontaneous mobs, Mike.
Yeah.
Or in this case, protests or whatever you want to call it, but no such thing.
Here's the New York Times, the paper of record, which at the time was the deep state flagship. December 2013, a judge questions the legality of the NSA phone records. So now you see the game bearing a little bit of fruit. You have judges issuing rulings. And that picture's from the New York Times, by the way. That's a bus in Washington, D.C., completely wrapped. Thank you, Edward Snowden. Take action at thankyouedwardsnowden.org. Who's paying for this? Come on. Well, it was the Partnership for Civil Justice Front. And these are deep state front groups.
Mm-hmm.
Paying to wrap a bus like this.
Yep.
Very intense.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you see headlines like that coming out of the New York Times of old, and images like that being plastered on a bus.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a tell. It's just like Time Magazine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by now the NSA is famous, or in the minds of many normies, infamous.
Infamous.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So no such agency went from operating in the shadows the way they like it to universal exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And here's an excerpt from the New York Times quoting this judge in his ruling. You can scroll down just a little bit. I cannot imagine a more indiscriminate and arbitrary invasion than the systematic high-tech collection and retention of personal data on virtually every single citizen for purposes of querying and analyzing it without prior judicial approval. Judge Leone wrote in a 68-page ruling. So now you got your deep state judges issuing these rulings.
Mm-hmm. So that was really the objective, was to get these judicial injunctions to try to not just to paint the NSA in a bad light and in the minds of the public, but also to begin this process of trying to roadblock what they were doing.
Yeah,
kind of
the first thing was awareness, which they succeeded in doing. We talk about the AIDA pyramid: awareness, interest, desire. They did create universal awareness that this military agency has got all of our stuff.
Right.
They never even came close to getting to the point of action, because evidently by this time the NSA, I mean, they've got their influence as well. They can do some stuff, and I'm going to show you in a little bit what they're still capable of. So this effort, it never got off the ground. It did do some damage in terms of awareness in the NSA, but legislatively, they never even came close to achieving what they hoped to achieve, which was to create the process of civil oversight. And you even had the ACLUs calling for them to be shut down. Then you had some clowns, so-called experts and academics, appearing on TV saying, oh, this agency is redundant. It should shut it down and transfer some of its capabilities to the CIA. that sort of stuff.
So
That
that
was
was
the
really,
ultimate pipe dream. It
yeah.
wasn't going to happen.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, they did succeed in putting a spotlight on this military operation, which does not want spotlights.
Okay, so that was really the overall objective of the deep state, was to try to bring the NSA under the umbrella of the CIA, so that they could basically.
Yeah, there was a few characters even said so as much.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need. I saw one on Charlie Rose show many years ago. You know, that was his case. That it's redundant anyway. You know, we don't need this agency. Just CIA can handle it. Yeah. Talk.
Yeah. CIA can be in control of all these things,
Yeah.
and then it'll be just fine. You know, we don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it.
If CIA's got all your emails and text messages, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not the military. Yeah.
No. Can't have that.
Yeah.
All right.
Now we link this to Q. And again, everything I've covered is 4 years before Q even posted. So now when we tie it all together, it just makes the Q posts all the more powerful. And the reality of this operation all the more undeniable. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
So the NSA established in 1952, and like I said, it grew out of U.S. Army Signal Corps. The term "we have it all" appears 16 times in the Q drops. Who's we? Well, NSA have it all. All of what? Everything you can imagine. Every single bad thing that the bad guys ever did, in every single one of them, they have it all on them. Okay. The challenge then becomes now, how do you build a file on each one, and then you begin the process of taking them down in a legal way. And that's a whole nother matter we discuss. How do you inject evidence legally? Again, the Q post, 58 mentions of Edward Snowden. 58 mentions. All of them in a bad way, scornful way, derogatory way, many of them overtly threatening. And we know what happens when Q puts the threat on you. How many times have we seen that? Guys end up badly.
Yep.
Or they suddenly end up being pro-Trump. One or the other. There's so many precedents.
I mean, 58 mentions. That's on par with Epstein.
Yeah. This is a big deal.
That's how big this is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And here's just one of them, my faves on Snowden, 144, November 12th, 2017. And look how early this is. This is 2 weeks in.
Yep.
Okay, first post is October 28th. And I'm going to read the Q post, and then, some of my answers in here, I have them in red italics just for further clarification. What is no such agency? Well, that's NSA. National Security Agency. Q Group. What is Q Group? Answer: it's an NSA task force to hunt down Snowden. And I'm going to show you the receipt on that one in a moment. Who has clearance to the full picture? Well, the NSA director would. That's important. +++, Admiral R+++. That's Admiral Rogers, head of the NSA from 2014 to 2018. Who's very close to Trump. He's the one who warned Trump about Trump Tower being butt and all that.
Yeah.
Okay. What agency is at war with the clowns in America, or CIA? NSA is at war with the clowns in America. We already do this, so this is like a further confirmation from Q, and it's got Snowden in there. So everything I said in 2013, I mean, boom, I read something like this. It's like, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
So, and at that point, you were still pretty black-pilled, if I remember our previous conversation.
Well, I didn't get turned on to the Q post till about January. I started reading them, January, February.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is like 4 months in, still pretty early for most people. Which was cool because I had enough time to go back and read them all and catch up.
Yep.
Whereas if somebody who's trying to get into it now, they got their homework cut out for them. What do we got? 5,000 posts and links and videos. It's really impossible to do. But if you caught on early on, you could just keep up with it day by day in small increments, which I've done. which is why I speak with such conviction about it. You know, I have to laugh at these people who are so anti-Q. And then, you know, you ask them, well, how many of the 5,000 posts have you actually read, analyzed, studied, matched up to current events? You know,
Yeah.
they won't.
No, it's always the same. It's if you don't follow Q, you don't have a clue, is what I say.
Yeah.
You know, it really is true. The people who black pill the most are the ones who know the least and have exposed themselves the least to reports, and they haven't done their homework. Doesn't mean that we know everything. It doesn't mean that we can paint a complete picture, but we certainly have a basis of understanding based upon what we were told in the drops. Whereas people who don't, they just write it up. Oh, that was a while ago. It's a psyop. Nothing ever happened. Blah blah blah. But, the reality is that once you dig into this stuff, you can't unsee it. You can't unlearn the things that you learn from.
Oh yeah, it really is quite obvious. And again, all the more so when you have a historical grounding and you know about things like Venona intercepts and NSA and Army Signal Corps, that helps a lot. It helped me a lot.
Yeah. Well, I would argue probably that very few people, other than Mike King, back in 2013, was able to identify what was really going on there with the NSA and Snowden, because, like you mentioned, I mean, so many of us got tricked by that. I mean, in the initial stages of it, a
lot of my early readers back then thought it was a great thing.
Yeah.
And they couldn't understand why I'm denigrating him. Like, oh, wait a minute, man.
Yep.
You gotta always watch who's very supportive of somebody. Like in 1952 and 1956, the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost, both years, wholeheartedly endorsed Dwight David Eisenhower. Republicans weren't paying attention to that. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Times in a they're telling you who the bad guy is.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, even conservatives, by 2013, they hadn't fully recognized that the mainstream media was the enemy. It was
that's true too. Yeah,
propaganda arm of the Democratic Party, as Q says. I don't think the penny had really dropped for a lot of folks on that. And that was, for me, that was like very, really early stages of my awakening. And I was, it was going to be several more years before I was going to truly figure that out. I mean, now looking back on it, it's so obvious, but at the time, if you didn't have that basic understanding that the whatever the mainstream media puts out there and props up, I mean, it's like very simple calculus. It means it's evil. I don't think a lot of people knew that at that point.
Yeah.
So, all right.
And there he is, Admiral R, one of the heroes of this operation. 4 years at the head of the NSA. And he was there when the Q drops began, which means he was very much involved in setting the groundwork for it, for sure.
Yep.
Admiral Mike Rogers featured prominently in the Q posts. I think there's a link to him on video administering the oath to some new recruits. I will defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. All right. And then there's that image of when we did the 9/11 show that I showed you. It had Trump at center.
Yep.
It was Trump, his vice president, his secretary of defense, and then flanking him were generals and admirals. The first one there was Rogers. And there were 9 on one side and 11 on the other side, which is weird because it's asymmetrical. It's contrary to everything the military does. I mean, everything with them is precision. You got 20 generals and admirals, you'd have 10 on each side, right? That 9 and 11, but he was right there next to Trump.
Absolutely.
So call him a psyop, right? Deep state psyop.
Yeah.
So
he's definitely one of the good guys. No question about that.
No doubt about that one. All right.
And interesting too that they put out that photo, for 9/11 because it kind of causes you to think, well, gee, when did they really go operational with this whole thing? That's one of the big things that I've wondered about. I mean, right now we're sort of highlighting the very beginning with Snowden, but does it go back even farther to the 9/11 era? I mean, people trace it all the way back to President Kennedy. It's almost impossible to know, but they've certainly.
Well, I think conceptually it could go back decades. But in terms of like the idea coalescing into a specific plan, it has to be before even putting together the 60,000 man secret army. I would think 2000 is a good point. 90s they released the ARPANET technology, which became the internet. So yeah, it goes back. It's hard to say, and maybe as they went along later on, when they got to a point where they had the manpower and the capabilities, then they formulated the exact plan. I'm sure the first thing they did is they had to map out every bit of data around every single bad guy, like putting together pieces of a puzzle. And then later on, you have to figure out, okay, how do we take that guy down? How do we inject it legally? So conceptually, it's actually quite simple when you look at the whole plan. It's the brilliance is in the tactical maneuverings of like doing it.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. When did they actually go operational?
Yeah.
It seems to me like 2012, 2013 was right around that time.
Well, yeah, that was a big step. That was definitely a big step of
moving forward.
Some more Q posts about Snowden. 2993. This is March 2019. So still, this is like going on his third year, and he's still talking about Snowden. So evidently, this is a very near and dear subject to them. Why did @Snowden only engage and attack the NSA? And that's a question I asked myself in 2013. Like what? The CIA, they're pure?
Right. They don't monitor to kill anybody.
You came from the CIA. You got nothing bad to say about them. The CIA who kills our presidents and various world leaders and foments coups and revolutions the world over. That's not even concealed. You got nothing bad to say about the CIA, though. If @Snowden really cared about privacy and citizenship awareness, why didn't he expose the CIA's main programs? Snowden was privy to DARPA, IQT, and NSA. Why did Snowden only focus on the NSA? He repeats the question. Where did @Snowden work prior to NSA? Again, there's his Socratic method of teaching. Okay, and people reading this in 2019 and ons are like, oh, he worked at the CIA. I said that back in 2013. I was pointing that out. So he went from the CIA, inserted him into the NSA to do his dirty work. Here's another one, Q Post 3586, November 2019. So this is 2 years after the first time he posted about Snowden. He's still talking about Snowden. Once C blank A, always C blank A. Of course, he's telling you Snowden was always CIA. @Snowden, pre-NSA, he repeats himself. @Snowden, base of ops, geographical location. Whistleblower versus POTUS. Former C blank A. He keeps saying that. A mockery. He's trying to, I don't know if it's some kind of non-disclosure law that accounts for the way Q asks questions instead of making direct statements, right? He keeps saying former CIA, but when Q asks a question, it's not a question.
Exactly.
He's trying to tell you he's former CIA. He's a rat. He's former CIA.
Well, I think that's part of it, Mike, that you hit on there. If you're asking questions, I mean, you're doing it in a Socratic method, which of course is very effective in terms of just getting people to dig for information on their own, as opposed to just coming out and making a statement and telling you the way it is. I don't think the Q operation would have been as effective. But I mean, I do think that there's probably a legal element to it as well. Whereas if you were to come out and make all of these statements, well, a statement is treated different than a question. You can ask a question, right? I mean, no harm in asking a question. It really deflects a lot of the criticism that you might get, or a lot of perhaps even, I don't know if they could have done anything legally about the Q board.
Well, there's classification laws. Now, it is public knowledge that Snowden came from the CIA, of course, but what he's saying here is that he never left the CIA. So it could be that NSA actually, they have the actual receipts that he was still working for the CIA, but that's classified. So that's why he says former CIA, because he's trying to say he's not former CIA. He was still working for the CIA, but maybe that was classified. I'm just speculating, but I think that's a big part of the reason as well. Yeah, he wants to encourage people to think on their own and come up with the answers, but it's also a way to get around classification laws if some of this stuff is classified.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'm not saying no, I'm just asking. He's telling us that he was still in touch with the CIA. Defined black op, clandestine. Snowden was a black op.
Yep.
And there's another post. I didn't list it, but it was like it said, "Oh, homecoming for Snowden in 2020." So that kind of suggests that that's when they got him. Mm-hmm. By the way, he still has the social media account. From time to time, he'll make a post, but he's too big of a name, right? He's the hero, the whistleblower. So I think it's another chess piece thing with him. They've now made a white hat out of Edward Snowden, but they took care of him. They really, really hate it. And there's many more posts, and it's just, it was clear they absolutely hated him. So there's the NSA, made much more famous by the Edward Snowden psyop, but thankfully it went nowhere. But we know what their intention was.
Yep.
Now here's the grand finale right here. This next book. This is 2013. Inside, this is the Daily Beast, the Deep State. I think they named it after Satan, the Beast. I don't know what that is. Daily Beast. Inside the Q Group, the directorate hunting down Edward Snowden. Q was hunting Snowden in 2013 before we even know what Q was. The top secret Q Group has been chasing Edward Snowden since he disappeared in May.
Wow.
Eli Lake on the intel community's internal police and why the agency is in complete freak out mode. And then 4 years later, when the Q posts start, you could see the emotion behind it. They really wanted this bastard. They really were in complete freak out mode.
Top secret Q Group.
Yeah.
Look at that.
So that's Q before there was a Q. Yeah.
Nice job, Mike. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Now, one more thing. That should be the last panel on this piece, correct?
I think there. No.
Yeah. This is the last panel here, and then we're going to go to a video. Now, at the peak of Snowden mania, Brian Williams, who at the time was probably the biggest anchor in the country.
Yeah.
Okay. He landed an exclusive interview with Edward Snowden. He managed to sneak into Moscow and meet Edward Snowden. And they did a big event on NBC News, again, puffing this guy up, the heroic whistleblower.
Yep.
Right. That was big. That was big. They got that exclusive. And that was like Brian Williams' claim to fame.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we all know what happened to Brian Williams. Those who forget, I mean, remind you, his career was ruined. He's gone. I don't know where he ended up. They shit-canned him at NBC. First 6 months without pay. This is a New York Times headline. And then he went to MSNBC. Now he's just gone altogether. Yeah. This had to be at the time, and this is, he's probably the biggest anchor in America. He succeeded Tom Brokaw. Okay. By now, Peter Jennings is out of the picture. Right. Yep. Dan Rather, he's the man. Biggest anchor in America. Done. What did he do? It came to light that he let's watch the video and then I'll tell you how it came to light.
All right. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Make it big screen here. Here we go.
NBC anchorman Brian Williams will be off the air for months after he embellished his story about his time in Iraq.
Well, tonight the network suspended Williams for 6 months without pay. CBS News' Erica Nachlin has the latest on the anchor's fall from grace. Erica.
Well, Pat, the president of NBC News said in an internal memo that Brian Williams' actions were wrong and inappropriate. And now some experts say the suspension is only delaying the inevitable.
On our broadcast tonight,
You won't see Brian Williams back on the air anytime soon. A decision announced Tuesday to suspend him for 6 months without pay came with a statement from the CEO of NBC Universal. He wrote, "By his actions, Brian has jeopardized the trust millions of Americans place in NBC News. His actions are inexcusable, and this suspension is severe and appropriate."
There are certain things that you cannot recover from.
Crisis communications expert Eric Rose says don't count on Williams returning to NBC ever.
Once it becomes a joke, it's almost impossible to overcome that. People will not think of him in anything other than this current crisis.
Jokes are all over social media. Twitter hashtags have popped up like Brian Williams suspension activities and Brian Williams next job. Even before the suspension, social media posts show Williams' face photoshopped on places like the moon. It all stems from Williams' false claims about his reporting from a helicopter during the Iraq War.
2 of our 4 helicopters were hit by ground fire, including the one I was in.
His legacy is going to be tainted, but there are things that he can do to rehabilitate his image as long as he's out of the news business.
But NBC CEO seems to be pulling for Williams' recovery. He also said he deserves a second chance and we're rooting for him. Brian has shared his deep remorse with me and he is committed to winning back everyone's trust. The president of NBC News says the network is still investigating this. Some experts believe this 6-month suspension time is also a chance for NBC to try out some different anchors. Back to you.
Thank you, Erica.
So bye-bye Lion Brian Williams, who tried to make himself out as some kind of war hero. I was on a helicopter. We got hit by a rocket. It's all made up. That was the end of his career. Now, here's what's interesting. That was just 6 months after he did the Snowden interview, which was very damaging. The whole country saw that. And he gave him the forum for that, snuck into Moscow and everything, because he's in cahoots with him. Do you know who broke that story? I just learned this a few days ago. Stars and Stripes newspaper, the official newspaper of the military.
All right.
I think he effed around and found out, and the White Hat sent him a message, and they took his ass down hard. They were very unhappy over this. That's my theory, and to me, it's the only one that makes sense, because they could have made this go away. They're all liars. All of a sudden, it's a big deal. That guy's a liar, right? No,
as if it was the first time, right?
Right. It was put out by Stars and Stripes, then picked up on the internet, elements of right-wing media, and we live in a different age today. Even though fake news at that time was still dominant, it was already at a point where there was enough on the internet and alternative sources and the White Hats that if they wanted to put something out and force you to address it, they could. They can never get away with covering up the USS Liberty today or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Or you look at ClimateGate or something. So the military put out this information on Williams, showed him up to be a liar. The information went viral. NBC had to shit can him in order to retain credibility. And I am convinced it's because of that Snowden interview. They taught him a lesson. And interesting, nothing happened after that. Nobody took up the mantle, the battle flag from Snowden and Matthews. So the effort just died and the NSA survived intact.
So it was a counter strike by the White Hats against Williams.
Yeah.
And then the whole Snowden story kind of faded off after that.
A lot of people they took down. Harvey Weinstein, that was White Hats. A lot of strange things happened in subsequent years. People who were formerly untouchable, but now it's routine. We see these guys fall, right? Like Bill Gates and so on. But just look at that period now, 2014, 15, 16, 17. Williams, Charlie Rose. He was another one. He was the one who had the expert on his show saying, we got to shut down the NSA and give the power. He's gone. They got him with the Me Too movement. Weinstein. This is unprecedented in history because generally in the past when these big people whether they're caught lying or in a scandal, you just ignore it and move on. Right? No more. So
another example evidencing the weaponization for the of the internet on behalf of the good guys, that this was a tool that they always knew was going to be a key part of the operation in terms of being able to proliferate this information and taking away the MSM's stranglehold, basically their monopoly on putting out information to the public. And we were well into that by that point, by 2013, 2014.
Yeah,
for sure. Excellent. Fantastic work, Mike, as usual. So before we go ahead and pivot into the next piece, we're going to take a minute here to bring up Mike's great website, realnewsandhistory.com. And obviously we have a very loyal audience that follows this show every Monday, but they never get tired of hearing about realnewsandhistory.com and how that they can support you. And certainly for the new people out there, because we are continuing to get more and more folks on the Rumble channel. And Mike's Rumble channel, by the way, is growing in leaps and bounds, which I'm sure he's going to talk about in just a moment. But very important for all the new folks to just kind of give them an orientation in terms of what you do so well, a specific niche that you have, and how folks can support all of your amazing. So tell folks a little about your website.
Okay. Well, 3 elements to my king. One is realnewsandhistory.com. And there's the website, and there's my motto. Fake history is the fake news that has passed into the rearview mirror. And I tell you, when you know the history of this cabal and what they've done these last 250 years, you'll begin to see that I'm really not that prescient and prophetic as you might think. I just know the precedents. Once you get the formula, it's easy to see what these people do. That's why I was able to call out Snowden in 2013.
Well, you got it really, really early, though, to your credit. I mean, I have to say that, like I mentioned before, there weren't a lot of people who were as dialed in as you were all the way back in 2013. That's impressive.
No, thank you.
Very impressive.
I'll tell you, if the information that's in these 34 books and PDFs, which are very easy to read and to understand, large print, lots of pictures, not overly verbose. There's the Mike King University offer there, $29 for all 34 books in PDF format. You start going through that stuff, and believe me, in due time, before you know it, you'll acquire the same so-called superpowers that I have. Because they've been at this game for so long, right? Like when you learn about the rent-a-mobs of the French Revolution and the revolutions of 1848, then you see something like that in Hong Kong where that's Snowden. It's like, oh, I've seen this before.
Pattern recognition.
Yep. So definitely recommend this. Apart from this, there's a ton of free content at the website, very user-friendly. But you support me, and you'll do yourself a favor and learn a ton of history. If you ever thought history was boring, it's because they've been pulling the rug over your eyes. It's not boring. It's suspense, it's intrigue, it's action, all in one. Okay, and those are my books. 34 books in PDFs, $29. If you're old school and you like a physical book in hand, the second element of the troika is my Amazon page. You go to my Amazon author page on Amazon, just search for Mike King or Mike S. King, and you'll see most of my books there in physical format, like this. Okay. The only thing you won't see there is some of the World War II stuff, too hot to handle, but you can still get that at my website at the books and PDF section. So a lot of books available. These are really nice coffee table books. They're all like 8.5 by 11. Great conversation starters or altercation starters. Depends on who your friends are. Okay. So yeah, do buy my books on Amazon. Some people are collecting them little at a time. By the way, I've got a package. You could get all 34 of my books for just $475, which is an enormous discount. Just send me an email on that at the website on my contact page. I'll send you invoice. But that's the Amazon page. A lot of the stuff is available in Kindle. If some of you have Kindle readers, you get some of these books in Kindle. Where you want to start was with that book right there on the left. If you're new to this, Crash Course NWO, 250 Years of the Globalist Conspiracy in 1 hour. I cover a quarter of a millennia of this stuff in 1 hour. Obviously, you're not going to be an expert and get all the details out of it, but it's the framework. And then if you want to add more meat to the bone later on, you got all my other books. As far as the Q operation goes, I know a lot of your people have read this either in PDF or in book format. If not, you need this as a foundation. The Secret Plan to Save Humanity, a summary of the Q operation and the rise of Commander Trump. These are only like $14. The Crash Course 9/11 Inside Job. That to me is, if you're an activist, and we should all be activists because, this thing doesn't go nowhere if all of us are just students. The idea is to infect other people with the truth virus, right?
Yep.
I think the best one to do that is Crash Course 9/11 Inside Job, because that story, that bullshit 9/11 Commission story is so easy to deconstruct, and it is so simple to show who the real perpetrators were, that anyone who reads that will develop the appetite for more and go further down the proverbial rat hole. So have a look at my books. Everything is in there. World Wars, Civil War, Napoleon, story of Andrew Jackson, the story of Joe McCarthy. All of it is fascinating because it's all linked. It all comes down to the cabal versus humanity through the generations. It really does go back that far. That's pretty wild.
Yep.
And then the third element is my Rumble page, which is relatively new, but it's taken off. I think I'm almost at 22,000
Congratulations.
which is awesome. But
Yeah.
there it is. Just go to Rumble and look for Mike King and follow me. Just don't look at the videos. Make sure you follow so we get the follow count out and join Rumble. It's free. It don't cost you anything. And I'm doing videos on historical topics, Q topics. There's a mix of everything. And I've got playlists there. I'm starting to categorize them. And the big project now that I'm wrapping up, I'm already into the 1980s. That's going to be published in a couple of days. I started this is episode 32, 250 years ago. The rise and fall of the New World Order cabal. And these are just 30 to 40-minute videos. It's me talking, and I've got my show and tell pictures. You go right from the beginning, decade by decade by decade. And by the time you get to the modern day, you'll know so much history, and you'll see the unmistakable connection to centuries past. And again, having this knowledge makes you appreciate the Q operation so much more. Not only does it make it more understandable, but you really appreciate the miraculous times we're living in, because this thing was so vast and deeply entrenched. It's like uprooting the redwood forest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that, I was long black-pilled, but, here we are. And again, the war has been won. It's just right now the great mop-up operation is unifying humanity in such a way that doesn't confuse them.
That's right.
Or cause them to resist. Now they want everybody united. That's why we're moving at this snail's pace with all of these psyops. I know it's tiresome and annoying, but I believe once you know the history of this and how big it was and how deep the generational brainwashing was, folks will appreciate, like you said, it had to be this way.
No doubt about it. Yep.
So that's it.
Yeah, the history, knowing the history really does give you that full appreciation of not only the miraculous nature of the plan, but also the reason, like Mike was just indicating, when people keep asking, why don't they just fast forward it? Why don't they just get it over with? Why don't they, when is it going to happen? All this stuff. When you go back more than 250 years and you trace the origins of the cabal, how they took power, how deeply entrenched it became, and how this covert war has been ongoing long before any of us had any clue that it was going on. And then you take all that and you cross-reference it with, the brainwashing of the public and how asleep people are. You come to appreciate why it has to be this long and winding road. But the good news is, and I actually, I talked about this with Dave last week, people are really starting to wake up. I don't know if you saw it, but I came across a survey that was about a year old, and they asked people, they made 3 basic statements that are aligned with the Q operation. And they found that nearly 20%, it was 19% of the people in that survey fully agreed with those statements. So you could kind of deduce from that even as of a year ago, despite the appearances that everybody's still asleep and everybody's still a normie and nobody's paying attention, on and on and on. The reality is quite different. The people really are a lot more cute-hearted than we might think. And then, of course, if you couple that with what we talked about last week, which is the fact that we're at about 90% of the public, 90%, 9 out of 10 people are demanding the release of the Epstein files, which is like the biggest issue, the most central part of the Q operation. You know, over the past year, that's really developed, going back to January with Bindergate and all of the, contradictory statements, everything that we've been talking about over this past year. We might get frustrated with it, but the fact of the matter is it's yielding fruit. I mean, you can't deny that the Q operation is working. No, how can you deny that when you're at 90% of people demanding transparent, unredacted files, demanding justice, demanding transparency? That's exactly what we want. So, if a year ago, 20% of the population was on board with this, you can only imagine what that number looks like now. That's very important.
Which is why I hope they redact the shit out of these things and release them like weeks late, because that's just gonna ratchet this up to new levels of desire. Remember that pyramid I talk about: attention, interest, desire, action. Attention and interest, done. What will trigger the desire is going to be the continuation of the cover-up, which I'm anticipating and hoping for, exactly 10 days from now. And once you get the desire actions, that's a layup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. That's really what this is all about. It's about manufacturing consent through, through the appearance, the optics of division and chaos and all of the things that people get blackpilled about. The reality is, if you take a step back and you look at the big picture of the issues that they want to generate a consensus on, it's already there. We already have the receipts on that. So really, it's just the question of, and then you also couple that with what we talked about a little bit earlier in terms of seeding the whole idea of sedition and treason and military tribunals. They're planting that seed inside of the mind at the same time as you got 90% of people demanding the release of the Epstein files, and they're talking more and more about military tribunals. You got the JAGs in DC. You've got the military deploying all over the country. I mean, if you can't see where this is headed now, folks, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but this operation is very real, and it is indeed working. So make sure that you go to Real News in History, bookmark that site, support what Mike does. He's truly one of a kind in our movement. He's been doing it now professionally for 14 years. And, he doesn't usually mention this, so I mention it just to underscore this to everybody. This is what Mike does for a living, okay? So very important that you support him and you keep him in the game. I know he's not going anywhere anyway. Wild horses drag him away, but the reality is that, all of us have to make a living, and Mike has been dedicating all of his time and energy to bring you this incredible analysis that you're really not going to get anywhere else. So make sure that you support him, you buy his books, become a patron, donate, do whatever you can to support the great Mike King. So with that, why don't we go ahead and bring our panel back here, and we're going to get into the second piece of the night, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. No, that's still the other one. Is entitled "The Legend of Franco is Growing in Spain." So, Mike, this really points directly to the fact that this is once again a worldwide operation, and also it mirrors some of the things that we've talked about before in terms of the youth in America becoming very, very right wing, and distrusting the political establishment. This is not just here; this is worldwide. So,
that's right. Which is why I adjusted his name from Franco to Franco. And it's interesting because before I saw this article, I noticed something weird in my Twitter feed. I don't know if you did as well, but on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the death of General Franco, I saw all these Franco posts showing up on my Twitter feed. It was just weird, like Twitter was promoting it. And then I see a story like this, and it kind of clicks and makes sense. But it seems as if General Francisco Franco, who's known as Generalissimo, ruled Spain for like 1939 to 1975, was death in 1975. He's making a comeback in Spain,
Mhm.
particularly amongst the young people. Isn't that interesting?
Mhm.
And it just kind of fits what's happening here. So there's the headline. Franco died 50 years ago, but he is still winning new fans in Spain. Young Spaniards are increasingly drawn to the dictator Francisco Franco. So the government is designing apps, games, and T-shirts to promote democracy.
I love it. I love it.
Uh,
It's just comical, right? So, all
yeah,
they're rejecting the political ideology of this leftist government. So what is the government's response? Well, we're just going to make some apps and, put some
yeah,
games out there, some T-shirts to promote democracy.
yeah, we're going to be even more nanny-ish than we are.
I mean, you can tell the script writers are having fun with this.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, this is very positive news for Europe. I mean, Europe is. I mean, we're all in bad shape, culturally, morally, economically. And we've talked about this, that, just because we wiped out the deep state, doesn't mean utopia is around the corner. There's going
No,
to
you
have to
don't
be
have
some
to have the
aggressive
Great
actions.
Awakening.
Yeah.
That's
But
the
one
really
thing at a time, one thing at a time. What
Right.
this does show, again, and there's many other proofs of this, is that this is worldwide, this Q operation. And it's every country in Europe is having this rightward march now.
Yep.
EU, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist. Neither does NATO. Okay, the whole thing's falling apart. The whole regional government leading to world government project is falling apart in Europe.
Mhm.
You see this in all the countries. But this is kind of a big deal because they invested a lot of time and energy to killing the legend of Franco in Spain. It was the kind of thing that would die out with the older generations, right?
Right.
But now look who's resurrecting young Spaniards, and there's a poll shows 20% of Spaniards, and that's huge. And when they start getting lectured to, no, here's an app, a T-shirt, that 20 will jump up to 30 and 40,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, and isn't that's an interesting number too, because I just referenced the 20% of people who are on board with Q here in America, and it so happens to be a similar number over there in Spain. You have to imagine that whether these people are quote unquote Q-tards like us, they certainly share the same political ideology. There's no doubt about that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, an existential threat to the establishment like this, the last thing that they would be doing would be coming up with apps and games and T-shirts to combat this. The real world, we'd be looking at a very, very different situation. Hardcore here,
exactly.
Put a clamp on this, but no T-shirts and games.
So this is, I mean, this is really an interesting development because he has been, his memory has been really eradicated, except amongst the older people.
Yep. Is that a picture?
Okay.
Is that a picture of the shroud there that I
saw?
Yeah,
it is. That's there's a memorial to Franco. I don't know if that's his gravesite or what, but they're laying flowers, and someone put a picture of the shroud and the New York Times.
Very interesting.
Did not edit it out. I mean, usually they're like Dracula when they see a cross, but there it is in the New York Times. And remember my prediction. I think the shroud is going to be in the news next year when Mel Gibson's movie comes out.
His movie comes out. Yeah.
And by the way, this here, I think we did a whole show on this.
Oh, we
for
sure
the
did.
benefit of new people. This is mind blowing. Not to digress too much. The divine selfie, the story of the Shroud of Turin and the cover up and the attempts to destroy it. And it's not like a religious faith book at all. I summarize the known forensic science of this amazing artifact that, by the way, has been proven to be 2,000 years old. It's not 800 years old like the fake debunkers said. But that's mind blowing. You can find the divine selfie. It's part of the PDF package, but it's also at the website.
Yep.
That show was a mind blower. We did.
Yeah, it was. People loved it.
It was a mind blower for me learning about it. I mean, a lot of it I knew, but what I discovered is some of the attempts to destroy it and debunk it, which are not widely known. But it's clear that the powers that be, they fear the shroud. They fear the image on the shroud because they can't explain it. It's a photographic negative. So
now, that was like a spiritual experience. I know you didn't intend it that way, but I remember doing that show and I was just
Oh yeah, you're not the only one who said that.
Spiritual energy, just
Yeah.
learning about this, and here we go again. The Q York Times. Do we really think that the Times of old would put that very noticeable image?
All they had to do was just cut the 1/8 of that picture. No, but there it is, and it catches your eye.
There it is. It's unmistakable, right there.
But Franco was the defender of Christianity in Spain, so it's only fitting that the script writers would put that image there.
Yep.
So this piece is combining what's going on today with what went on in the 1930s, and I'm going to talk about both. And again, you'll see that constant theme I always talk about. You weave the history and the news together, and it makes the contemporary times all the more understandable. So there's Franco, big fan of Hitler. Oh, that alone is enough to have your legacy killed, right? In fact, Germany, Hitler, and Italy helped Franco during the Civil War, which we're going to talk about. He did stay out of World War II, but he was very, very friendly and very big admirer of Hitler. Mm. And this I'm quoting from the article, which, again, this is another element of the story, the fact that you would read something like this in the New York Times is strange. But actually, it's not strange if you know what's going on in this world. Since Franco's death, his legacy has been fiercely contested by the left and the right and everyone in between. But instead of just fading away, that debate has intensified recently as young conservatives, many of whom back Spain's surging hard right party, join the calls to revive the dictator's image. So this is something new that just came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Who's behind it? Who's behind all the Franco stuff that was in my Twitter feed? Something's going on.
Yep.
In recent days, the country has been wrestling with a national survey showing that 20% of Spain's youth have a positive view of the Franco dictatorship. Social media channels of young voters teem with pro-Franco content. This reminds me of our friend on CNN almost with the polls, right? Yep. He's all excited. Yep. This is the New York Times, and of course, there's a few obligatory stuff about dictator, autocracy.
Right.
But let me tell you, if this was like the times of old, it would just be like vicious diatribe. Franco the devil, Franco the monster. No, this is remarkably, for time standards, quite neutral and objective.
Yep.
And how many times have we seen that? Because it's the New York Times.
Right. And just because you mentioned the guy on CNN, I noticed that you posted a headline from QNN about satanic ritual abuse.
Did you see that? Yeah.
See that. Yep.
Yeah. Put that on Twitter.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact context of it, but they busted some sort of a
ring in Australia.
It was Australia, right? Okay.
Yeah. It was a ring too. Yeah. Satanic pedo sex abuse.
Yeah, that was literally the headline.
The headline, QNN.
CNN.
Yeah, right.
Draw your own conclusions, folks.
Yeah. QNN, New York Times.
Yep. All right. So the next
that's the good news out of Spain, and this number is going to grow.
Oh yeah.
So let's see what's the next panel here. Now, in Spain, they have a Ministry of Territorial Policy and Democratic Memory.
Oh my goodness.
How Orwellian is that? Ministry of Democratic Memory. In the democratic memory, it serves the purpose of constantly reminding Spaniards how wonderful everything has been since Spain became democratic not long after Franco's death. In reality, Spain is, it's been plagued just like the rest of Europe with high inflation and unemployment. Leftist, socialist, absorbed by the European Union. A few years ago, a tranny was won the Miss Spain pageant. I don't know if white hats rigged that to wake people up or not, but that's the new Spain.
Well, it's interesting, Mike. I actually just grokked it because I was curious about the name, the Ministry of Territorial Policy and Democratic Memory, like when that was actually founded.
Yeah.
And they changed the name. It used to be the Ministry of the Presidency, Justice, and Relations with the Courts, but they changed it to this Orwellian name in December of 2023.
Boom. White hats.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now, I could see leftists coming up with a crazy name like this as well, but now that you tell me it's 2023, oh, it's definitely white hats.
How do they make it a little bit more obvious?
Well, yeah, because now you see the ministers of democratic memory telling you, oh, stay away from Franco. Here's an app, boys and girls. And we got games and T-shirts and events. Can you think of a better way to turn more people on to Franco than this? Seriously.
Yeah.
Look at these little school marms, right?
Yeah.
Just
a new operation, baby.
You could have scripted it any better. Nobody wants to be lectured. Here's a game in an app.
Yeah. It's like de Blasio telling everyone they're going to get free French fries if they go get their COVID shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Or this is like, these are a bunch of AOCs, if you ask me.
Oh, yeah. Look at it.
That's the effect that's going to have. The Ministry of Democratic Memory says, stay away from Franco. No, this is reverse psychology, white hat operation for sure.
Yep.
Because let me tell you, the old Spain, I mean the pre-Q Spain, would be no apps, games. No, you get a knock on the door, you go to jail.
Exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Right.
All right. Or they get you on hate speech, or they dox you. Okay. None of this crap.
Yep. No, this is full control, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. In Spain.
Yep. All right. Let's see what else we got.
Apps. But in his day, he was a rock star. I mean, you still had the Spanish leftist underground, but they stayed underground. But the vast majority of Spaniards, normal Spain, understand what he did for Spain. He saved Spain from Bolshevism, frankly. Okay? Basically did for Spain what Hitler did for Germany. I mean, they did not achieve that level of, blossoming and recovery, but there was stability. There was great stability in Spain, and people ate and they had work. I knew an old-time Spaniard once used to say, "Oh, things were great under Franco."
Now, did Hitler try to get Franco involved in World War II? What's the story there? Why did they stay out of it?
Well, it's interesting because Gibraltar, which is right there in that little narrow strait between Spain and North Africa, Morocco, Spain always considered that Spanish, but the British had control of it. And Hitler wanted Franco, since they considered it Spain anyway, to take it. Just take Gibraltar, we'll back you up, it'll be a piece of cake. That would have been huge because it was a choke point, would have cut the British off entirely from the Mediterranean. Okay? And Franco was leaning towards it, and Hitler met with him to that end. Okay? And it might have turned the tide of the war early on. The reason he didn't do it is there was a traitor, unbeknownst to Hitler. This traitor, he was the head of the German military intelligence, the Abwehr. His name was Admiral Canaris. He's one of those aristocratic types who hated Hitler. They wanted Germany to lose because that was the only way they were going to overthrow Hitler. Well, Hitler actually sent Canaris to meet with Franco to close that deal, to take Gibraltar. Would have been a huge strategic gain for Germany early in the war.
And Hitler didn't know that he was a traitor, I assume.
Didn't know he was a traitor. He didn't find out till 1944, and they had him executed.
Was he part of the Valkyrie operation, this guy?
He was hooked up with all those clowns,
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And they wanted Germany to lose, not for the reasons that fake historians portray, because they were patriots concerned about this evil man. No. They were of that aristocratic ilk. They didn't like this meritocracy populist system. They're like, okay, Hitler, get rid of the commies. We're down with that. But we want power back. We want our privileges back.
Right.
Understand?
Mm-hmm.
So Canaris, unbeknownst to Hitler, totally unbeknownst to Hitler, rather than making the deal with Franco, is telling him, oh, we got no shot. We're going to lose this war. It'll be a big mistake if Spain gets in, blah, 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 blah. And this is at a time when Germany has the advantage early on. Canaris talked him out of it based on lies. And for that reason, Franco did not take Gibraltar, which would have been a very, very big loss for the British. So that's the whole story there of
Wow.
why Franco did not.
So Franco then must have presumed that Hitler was delivering that message through Canaris.
No,
No?
Canaris, he knew that Hitler wanted him to join the war. Canaris presented it like, listen, General, not for nothing between me and you.
Oh,
We're
okay.
making a mistake like that.
Okay.
And this came out later. The Spaniards admitted that, Canaris, made it clear to them Germany's got no shot. This will be bad for Spain. And who knows how it would have turned out, but they might have been able to knock Britain out earlier. I mean, that would have been such a tremendous loss.
Well, that had to have made Hitler.
Because now the British would have to sail all the way around tip of Africa.
Right.
Okay. To get to their colonial holdings in the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, considering this would have been such a huge strategic advantage for Germany, and Hitler sent Canaris there, presumably to seal the deal, and then Spain just decides, you know what, we're not going to do it.
Right.
He must have had some questions like, what happened there? I thought this was, kind of going to be a layup. And I don't know. I guess
I'm sure Hitler felt kind of bad about it, a little bit betrayed, because without Germany's air support, Franco would not have prevailed in the Spanish Civil War.
So did that sour the relationship between him and Hitler for a period?
No, I think Hitler understood because it still would have entailed risks for Spain because if they take Britain, they take Gibraltar, then there'll be war at Britain, but they'll be safe because they have Germany got their back. But I think Canaris was also telling them in due time, the United States will join the war again. You'll have no shot, and it might have turned out to be the case anyway. I mean, there's no guarantee that had Franco joined the war that Germany wins early,
right?
Because even Churchill was saying that if they invaded our island, the United States will come to our rescue. So they would have kept fighting until they won. So maybe it was a good thing for Spain to stay out anyway. I mean, you can't really. It's hard to play Monday morning quarterback after the fact and go back in the past and say, "Oh, what if he took Gibraltar? What would have happened?" But it certainly would have complicated Britain's war effort tremendously. But he did stay out, and it was Canaris who talked him out of it. There's a whole story of how the internal treason of these freaking aristocrats so hindered the German war effort. I am convinced Germany would have won the war with that, because it wasn't just this. It was also in Russia. They got bogged down in Stalingrad. I believe without the treason, Germany would have knocked out Britain and the Soviet Union before the United States had a chance to enter. And this was part of it. It was really bad.
Wow.
But that is why Franco stayed out, because Canaris put all that black pilling in his ear, unbeknownst to Hitler.
All right. Well, thanks for filling in that gap there. I'm sure the audience appreciates it. So how did
he gave a very nice after Hitler died? He spoke very well, and gave it not a eulogy, but issued a statement. Mm-hmm. What a great man Hitler was.
Back in 1975 or somewhere around there. Oh yeah, that's when he died.
No, 1945.
Oh, 45. Okay, yeah.
Yes, I'm saying after Hitler's death, Franco.
Oh, after Hitler's death. Sorry. Yeah.
Spoke very highly of him. So he was a big admirer. So just for that alone, the idea that this guy's coming back into vogue is really remarkable, astonishing.
Well, so is Hitler, as it turns out.
Well, he is little by little. I mean, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan are revisiting World War II. That's definitely a trend, and that's cute. Yep. There's no question about it. They're putting out this narrative that the world wars were not what we were led to believe they were. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a tough sell in the long haul, but I believe after the storm has passed, people's minds will be much more receptive to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I personally think, given the how deeply ingrained the legend and the folklore is surrounding World War II, it's probably going to take a generation or two for folks to really accept the truth about.
Well, it depends how hard the storm hits about contemporary events. For example, let's say 9/11 truth comes out totally. What does that do to the public mind? It's going to automatically make it more receptive. to anything else. So
Well, that's true.
if this is done well, we could have total re-education in the short term rather than another generation.
Wouldn't that
So-
be amazing if we
It
actually,
would.
if we
Yeah.
live to see that?
Yeah.
A total revisionist history or a correctionist history.
Yeah, but think about it. Something like Epstein Island truth, 9/11 truth. That's such an icebreaker. Everything else will flow after that.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, how many times have you heard people say, we're kind of new to this, to say, well, after learning about 9/11 and stuff, I'm open to anything, and
Yep.
they are. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see.
But clearly, there's some cracks in the dam.
Oh yeah.
All right, from 1936 to 1939, that period was the Spanish Civil War, which we averted in this country. I am convinced. Thanks to the election of Donald Trump, we didn't have to go this route. Thank God we didn't, because this was bad. But here's what happened. In 1936, the Democratic Socialist government of Spain was really leaning hard left. And again, this would be analogous to 2016. I mean, our government was already screwed up. But if Hillary got in there, right, Nancy Pelosi as speaker, that kind of stuff, we were on the brink.
Yep.
So that's where Spain was in 1936. I think very analogous to where we were in 2016. And that is when, at the 11th hour, the military is the only way. That's like a constant throughout history. General Franco and his allies in the military rose up to overthrow this government. And that's the start of the Spanish Civil War. And the communists and the libtards, they lined up behind the government. And then the nationalists, conservatives, and Catholics favored Franco. So there's your battle lines.
And the military was split, of course.
The military was also split.
Yep.
Right. You had military doing their duty to the existing government. And then you had the Franco forces. That's the problem. You see, the military is never monolithic. Same with the Russian Revolution. If the military is monolithic, well, piece of cake. Just walk in and take power. No.
Right.
And that's what made.
Now, would you characterize? I know it's speculative to a degree, but would you characterize the U.S. military as being more monolithic now at this point after all these purges?
I believe so. At the level of the commanding officers, yeah, I think a lot of stuff has gone down.
In terms of the leadership, yeah, I would agree,
Yeah.
and that's really the important, because soldiers take orders. That's the way it works. So you have the if you have all of the leaders, the important higher ups in the military on the same page, that's pretty much game over. But some people still make that case. Oh, there's division in the military, and on and on. I don't believe it, but I was just curious to hear how you.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there isn't a rank and file, but what you have to worry about is the generals, the admirals, the commanding officers, and Derek Johnson's done a good job. That's his wheelhouse. He's like specializing in tracking all of these like resignations for corruption or whatever.
Yep.
And it's been an unusual number. So, the Q operation doesn't miss a trick. So I think they got most of them too.
Yeah, they basically reversed what Obama did when he was purging all the generals in anticipation.
That's right. He was getting rid of all generals and admirals, 197, and putting in his own, right? People like
preparing for the final blow with Hillary. Yep.
Yeah.
That was where it was headed.
And we've always had this in American military. You got your deep state generals, your Eisenhowers, right? Your George Marshalls, your Petraeus.
Oh yeah, we talked about them last week.
Colin Powell, all those characters. Mm-hmm. And then you got your Pattons and your MacArthurs. So it's the same thing.
Bernard Baruch's friends. And Patriots.
You're a politicized Bernard Baruch type cabal generals.
Right.
And then you're fighting patriotic generals. So this has always existed here. So that's the tricky part about these coups, you run the risk of splitting the military. Mm-hmm. So the war then developed into a proxy war between nationalism and globalism. It was a prelude for World War II. This is a dress rehearsal for World War II in terms of the competing ideologies and the forces at work internally. And it's a real mess because, these kinds of divisions, they cut between families even, right? Oh, yeah. And then you have your irregular fighters, your militia groups. You got your left-wing militias, and then you got your right-wing militias.
Well, imagine if it did become kinetic, Mike. I mean, imagine if it did actually go in that direction and they weren't able to get Trump in there, or if the military acted preemptively in 2020 when we wanted them to, and it turned into a kinetic situation. I mean, you're talking about brother on brother.
Yeah.
You know, family on family. I mean, it would have been.
That's right.
An absolute horror show. So
you know, and I would imagine you'd have the good old boys in camo and their hunting rifles lining up behind the white hats.
Oh, yeah.
Then the black hats they would probably, I'm sure, with the MS-13 and the inner city street gangs, they would arm them up. That's what happened in the Russian Revolution. The Bolsheviks used criminals.
Yep. Emptied out the prisons.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine. But as bad as Spain was, a United States Civil War would have been even more destructive. And then going back to what I just said about this being a prelude for World War II, look who's supporting the opposing sides. Germany, Portugal, and Italy lined up behind Franco, and they provided direct and indirect military aid, including air cover in case of the German Air Force. Okay? Mm-hmm. Stalin, on the other hand, sent arms to the Spanish government. So this is totally a prelude to World War II. Yep. And in addition to that, you had volunteers from the Communist International, which constitutes the 70 or 80 communist parties of various countries around the world, also known as the Comintern. And from the United States, it was the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, is what they call themselves. Mm-hmm. So these were all communists and extreme libtards who volunteered to go fight for the leftist Spanish government. Mm-hmm. And there was an unusually high number of Polish who came. They were Jewish. They were Polish Bolshevik Jews. Same ones who started committing the massacres years later to induce Hitler into attacking Poland. So it was all the Bolsheviks flooded into Spain to support the government. Ghastly atrocities against civilians occurred. Bolsheviks do what Bolsheviks do. They would wage war of terror, just like the Red Terror of the Russian Civil War. They go after your family, your wife, your kids, kill them, demoralize you. Killed nuns, killed priests, because the Catholic Church was supportive of the Franco forces, at least in terms of morally supportive. Set fire to churches with the worshipers inside. They raped nuns, tortured priests. Horrible atrocities carried out by the Bolsheviks, Spanish Marxists. Yep. So after 3 years of this horror show, the war finally ends in victory for Franco. But Spain has got a lot of rebuilding to do. It's a mess. And, although the war ends, a lot of the native Spaniard leftists, the libtards, they're still there. They have to accept a new regime, but, the cancer was never killed, right?
Which is why it came back.
Eventually. That's a big part of it.
And we've talked about that in the past, how every civil war pretty much ends the same way. You've got one side that declares victory, but you've got a divided country.
Right. Look at the United States. The Reconstruction era lasted for like 10, 12 years because there were so many in the South didn't want to accept it. Mm-hmm. It's the same here, although they didn't fight against Franco. I mean, and this is another important Q theme: unity.
Exactly.
That's why this slow motion stuff that's driving us nuts has to play out. They could just take over tomorrow, no problem. Game over. They could have took over years ago. They want to do it in such a way that you've got 90+% of the country behind you, including the libtards, which we see happening now because they're demanding the release of the Epstein files. Libtards are, because they think Trump is in there.
You can't have a unified country in the wake of a kinetic civil war, which is reason that they had to do it this way, asymmetrical fifth generation warfare. Right. That's really what it comes down to.
Two reasons. One, the bloodbath, you want to avoid that. And two, the aftermath, you want everybody on the same page. That's how we make progress as a people.
Hearts and minds.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. There's only one way.
Franco didn't have this luxury, of course, because he didn't have a Q operation. It was either come out blasting or lose the country.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
And again, for like the third time, we'll remind folks the White Hats were prepared to do that, and Q made it very clear
absolutely.
that if this whole plan with Trump went sideways, they were coming in hot,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we would have been right in the thick of it.
It would have been a civil war, no doubt.
Yep.
Even if the good guys won, you know, all those people who voted for Hillary, they're going to accept, they're going to hate you in their heart of hearts.
That's right.
They might have to accept it, but look what happened now in 1975. 35 years later, Franco dies. He bequeaths his political power to the king, Juan Carlos, young king, a little bit libtarded, and he starts succumbing to this idea of, just like the monarchs of the 19th century, well, let's devolve some of the power to the parliament. And slowly but surely, Spain became more and more progressive and liberal.
Yep.
And this took a while because these were very conservative people. I mean, you go to Spain, everything was like proper law and order. They didn't have like all like the racy films and magazines and porn like the rest of Western Europe did.
Right.
But they started to introduce it.
And because they didn't get involved in World War II and therefore weren't conquered by the Allies, their government didn't fall under the CIA, basically.
Right.
Like,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's a great point because they, unlike every other government in Europe, whether it's Italy, Germany, Belgium, Holland, France, everyone was occupied. And then they came in with the Marshall Plan. Here's money to rebuild, but embedded in the Marshall Plan is a structure to begin building this liberal New World Order in Europe. That's what the European Union actually came out of the Marshall Plan, step by step. Spain didn't get any money. They were not involved in the war. There was no U.S. occupation. So they were able to exist, at least in a political sense, almost as a hermit nation. They were kind of built a wall around their country and kept that shit out.
Yep.
See?
But you still had that deep-rooted division and resentment.
You had some of it, and a lot of it dissipated after all these years. So it wasn't like Franco died, oh, let's start the war again. No, left was very weak by this time, but still existed. But the big problem is this King Juan Carlos starts loosening things up, and now you start getting infected by the rest of Western Europe. And it wasn't long before they start with the trade deals, and they get on the pathway to integration with Europe, and then the NATO and the European Union. Didn't happen instantly, but you could already see by the late 70s that this character Juan Carlos is intending to begin this process.
Yeah, and the reason I mentioned that is because, again, it just goes to show you when you don't have the unified hearts and minds of the people of the country, the whole idea of national populism is constantly going to be under threat. If you don't have, upwards of 80-90% of the population on board with that nationalist ideology, then that cancer is going to spread. It may take a little time, but eventually the hearts and minds determine the real victor of the war.
Yeah.
So,
particularly in a place like Europe, I mean, once those sociological, ideological borders come down, it's just easy to become infected with the ideas that infected the rest of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened, and eventually Spain is what it is today. Transgender Miss Spain. Whether that was rigged or not, the point is, Spain went down the tubes culturally. It's like the rest of Europe. Okay.
Yep. But now there's a resurgence.
Now there's a resurgence. The country's moving rightward. A lot of damage needs to be undone, but we shall see. Now, talking about this Spanish Civil War, there's some images there. That's the kind of fighting that took place, like in the middle of the street, like barricades, urban fighting, brutal. Top right, there's an image of Spanish communists, or maybe they're Abraham Lincoln Brigade. Maybe they're, I don't know who exactly is in that picture, but they're executing Jesus by firing squad there. You see that? They're firing at a statue.
Goodness, yeah.
Yeah. They hated religion. They hated God. I mean, they're atheists.
Yeah.
And
but now we have the shroud on the cover of the New York. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Interesting, right? Wow. Yeah, I didn't know what that was. I thought that was like a ship or something, but now I can see it's
Yeah, the top of the image, if you scroll down, you'll see that's a Jesus statue, and they're executing.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay,
fire squad.
sorry.
Yeah,
I went down too far there. Yeah, you can see it.
yeah. So lovely characters. And on the bottom, that's some gruesome stuff right there. This is hardcore Bolshevism, the real sick stuff. They were digging up the bodies of priests and nuns and just propping them up like that, just so they could defile and mock them, destroying churches.
Ugh.
Look at the right corner. There's the corpse of a nun they just dug up, just to make mockery.
Sick.
So these are some really nasty characters that Franco is fighting.
Yep.
And these are embedded within. I mean, this isn't what all the fighters did, of course, but these are the worst of the worst. But that was your battle lines. Your libtards, your atheists, your communists, and then your loyalist troops, loyal to the government, versus Franco and normal, traditional people of Spain.
Well, we were talking a moment ago about basically correcting World War II history. And it always strikes me when we have these conversations, how few people have any idea about the atrocities that were committed by the Bolsheviks. And this was before World War II, but, even going back to the Russian Revolution, now we're talking about the Spanish Civil War. And then we've talked at length about World War II and how the whole story of the Holocaust overshadows all that. But people really don't, I don't even know if overshadow is the right word. It's kind of like I guess a distraction to hide the real atrocities that the Bolsheviks carried out.
Yeah,
that's something that I would really like to see in my lifetime corrected, because you're talking about
even the stuff that happened during the Spanish Civil War is kind of like covered up. They speak about it as, it was a horrible affair and atrocities on both sides. No, Franco's people did not dig up dead bodies of nuns and priests and make that kind of mockery. No. But that's where Franco saved the country from.
Yep. Yep. Wow.
And the older generations remember, but with their passing, so too went the passing of the memory and the legacy of Franco. So to see it come back now with the younger people, it's very intriguing how that happened. Promising.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, another banger show from Mike King, folks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Once again, make sure you're following both of us on Rumble. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. And, or if you're watching on X, it's the heart button. Positive affirmation is what they call it. But it does go a long way in terms of boosting the show, making it more widely available to a larger audience, as Mike was talking about a little bit earlier. Clearly, we can see that it's working with the Rumble page. I remember when we first started talking about your Rumble page, it was like less than 10,000. Now you're over 20,000, and it's just going to continue to grow from there. So that is the kind of baseline level of support that we ask everybody out there to engage in, because once again, it's free, it's easy. And it just goes a long way in terms of boosting not only the algorithm, but also the credibility of the information. Very, very important to do that. So make sure that you leave a comment. Let us know what you thought. And as I always ask Mike at the end of every show, what's next? What are you working on? You got an article coming out tonight, tomorrow?
Yeah, I've got one going out tonight about there's business in Venezuela that some people got agitated about. Oh, what's Trump doing? Well,
that's a big story right now. Yeah, it looks like they're preparing the optics of making a move on Venezuela.
Yeah, well, it also turns out that he's been talking on the phone with Maduro. So it's just yet another case of Trump threatening to blow up a country, and then at the 11th hour they kiss and make up. Mm-hmm. So we're not going to go to war with Venezuela.
No. Yeah, so, and even if there are the optics of some strikes or some.
Yeah, exactly. And in the article, I show all the precedents. He did this with Afghanistan. He did this with Syria. He did this with North Korea. He did this with Iran. And still, people don't get it. They don't see the pattern. No, Trump is the dove. He is the peacemaker.
Right. Yeah.
No matter what, he's
certainly possible that they could be clearing up
Well, they might be hitting some drug gangs and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right,
But
right.
no, we're not. We don't. Trump doesn't do regime change. Even if the guy does step down, it's part of the script.
Yep.
Yeah.
One place we need a regime change is Israel.
Yeah.
Well, we already got it, but
we already got it. Yeah, we just want the replay.
yeah, for sure. All right, Mike. Well, thank you so much for another amazing show. I hope you folks enjoyed. We're going to be back, of course, next Monday, and we will, I'm sure, have a whole host of new topics to get into. We never know what's going to take place. We part ways on a Monday, but it's always that's what makes us so interesting and exciting.
Yeah.
So support Mike King at realnewsandhistory.com. You can also check out the links in the description for ways to support my work. We really do appreciate that. So we'll be back with you folks soon. But until then, God bless. Godspeed, everybody.
Good
Patriotic.
night,